What's up YouTube? This is Kyle with Carve Creative, and today I'm going to be changing the bearings on my Onewheel GT. So this board has 125 miles on it. The bearings are still perfectly fine. The stock bearings are okay. The only reason I'm changing them out is because I really like the FAG bearings and they're very smooth and I feel like I get better mileage with them. So I'm going to be putting them on here today and showing you how I do it here in the shop. All right, so I'm going to talk about this tool a little bit because this is my favorite tool that I have in the shop. This is a DeWalt gyroscopic screwdriver. I use it for almost everything on the boards other than the axle bolts. It's really nice because you basically engage it in any direction that you're turning your wrist, it goes. So it's just really intuitive and it helps me get through these boards really fast. So I'm going to take off my 2 foot pad screws right here. I'm going to flip it upside down and I'm going to be removing these screws here. Now with the GT, it's really nice because the screws are so simple and they actually show you right here what screws are going where. So the short screws are only used on the bottom of these bumpers, and there's 2 short screws on the front and there's 4 short screws on the back. It's very easy to keep track of. The XR had I think 3 or 4 different screw sizes and people were always putting them in the wrong spot. So hopefully this helps solve that problem. All right, so now we're just gonna slide this bumper right out. You can see my controller's got some little scratches on it. That's just from little pieces of rocks and gravel. When you slide those bumpers out, it just puts little notches in there. It's not really the end of the world. There's gonna be perfectionists that get annoyed by it, but I'm well aware that this board is gonna look a lot worse than this in a couple months. Okay, so now we're gonna take off these 2 screws, and that's the last thing that's holding the foot pad. I'm gonna keep my hand underneath there to support it. And the second one. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this tool that comes with the foot pad, and if you don't have this tool, you can use a channel locks. And basically I'm just gonna spin this thing until I feel it click, and now I can do the rest with my fingers and just lightly pull that out of there. And there's our foot pad. So next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just remove this rail, but I need to get rid of this back bumper to do that as well. So we got the 4 small screws. And then we got the 2 longer screws. And then this bumper just comes right off. It's definitely a different design than the front one. So now we're gonna take off the back foot pad. I'm gonna get these 2 little screws, or big screws, not little screws. I'm gonna flip it back around and get the 2 foot pad screws up top. And there you can see the battery compartment of the board. And now on this side, I'm gonna be taking off the rail, but there's 4 screws up here that I need to take off to get to that rail. And these are gonna be longer screws, because like we said, the short screws are just gonna be on the bottom of those bumpers. If you look right here, I'm gonna be removing these covers. Okay, so I'm gonna be getting rid of these axle bolts here. The size of this bit is kind of up in the air right now. Some people think it's a TP, which is Torx Plus 45, and other people are saying that it's a Ribe M8. So that's what I have here is the Ribe. It fits really nice and snug in there. So we're gonna give it a try and see what happens. So when you do these bits, it seems to have a little bit of wiggle room. So you wanna keep good pressure on it. And essentially, there we go. Just always want to have nice even pressure because we don't want to strip anything out. So I got those ones broken, and I believe these are going to be some pretty long bolts. And now our rail should just come right off. And you can see the rail on the inside, which is pretty cool. So here we have the XR rail and the GT rail. You can see that the GT rail definitely looks to be a little bit more solid. It seems thicker, and hopefully that means that people won't be bending them. Now that I got the rail off there, it's time for me to unplug the motor cable. It's a lot easier to do it this way. I have a lot more room to work with. I don't have to finagle with this cord and make sure that it's in the rail. So same thing with the foot pad. I'm gonna take this front nut, I'm gonna spin it till I feel that click. It moves back, and I'm just gonna slowly shift this thing off of here. And there's that plug. I'm gonna get rid of these bolts. All right. Now, we got our tire out of the rails. Now I'm gonna take off this plate cover here. This is gonna be the same size as all the other Torx, which is a T25. So now I'm gonna bring it over to the press and I'm gonna break it free. So when I do that, the main thing is I don't wanna smash this cord in any sort of way. So I'm gonna make sure that my cord is in this void right here. I'm gonna apply pressure with the press. Just like that. Get them both about the same distance in. And I'm gonna take a 5/8 wrench, slide it underneath here, and now I got a nice little handle that I can actually pull the hub out with. So I'm gonna put the hub in between my knees and pull it right out. There we have our stator.
And you're just getting it out now?
Yeah. There we go. Sometimes you have to use a bearing puller to get the covers off, but this is still such a new board that luckily I was able to just shimmy it off with my hands by just slowly rocking it back and forth. And there's this plate right here. All right, so now I'm gonna get the bearing out of this hub plate and I'm gonna put it over this PVC coupling. And I use a socket. This is a 32mm socket to remove the bearing. That's it. So we got our first bearing.
How's it look?
It's fine. I mean, it's definitely decent, but like I said, it can be better. Before I put a new bearing inside here, I'm gonna clean this out really nice. I wanna make sure that when I seat the new bearing, I have nothing in my way obstructing it. So I just take a toothbrush, get it really nice and clean. Now I'm gonna take a Q-tip and make sure that I don't have anything left over, no moisture, anything like that. You can see there was definitely some stuff in there. We're gonna press our first bearing here, and I'm gonna set this thing in here as evenly as possible. And to press it, I have this piece of steel that is the exact same size as the bearing. And when you press these, I've seen people just in one solid press the bearing down, but I was told that it's better to rotate as you're pressing. So I'll do like 4 different rotations as I'm pressing. So I'm gonna do the first one, a little bit. I'm gonna rotate it, do the second, a little bit, rotate it again, another little press, and now for the final one, I'm just gonna send it home. And there we go. And I'll just give it another press, make sure we're good. And there's the first one. You can see that there's no ridges anywhere. You can see that it's all seated nice and evenly. And a big part of that is using an arbor press. I've seen videos of people using like PVC and wood, and yes, that is possible. But especially for me running a shop, I want to do this as professionally as I possibly can for other people's boards and for my own. So an arbor press is a very good investment. It's pretty hard to mess up a bearing job when you use one of these things. So now we're going to do the hub. And for that one, I'm going to pretty much do the same thing here. And I'm going to clean all this stuff off. Take my Q-tip again, clean it up real nice. Okay, so now you can see I got that all cleaned up, and that is now ready for a fresh new bearing. So now I'm gonna put the bearing inside of my hub. I go a little bit overboard when I do this because I have had instances where the bearing gets stuck to the magnets or the die gets stuck to the magnets. So what I do is first I will take this PVC and throw it right in the middle. That way I have no chance of anything getting caught up on those magnets there. So I got my bearing, I'm gonna set it in there, same way as before. I've got my die, I'm gonna put that in there. Get it as centered on there as I possibly can. And same thing when I was doing my hub plate, I'm gonna rotate this thing as I'm pressing 4 times. And we got our fresh bearing again. So before I put the stator back in, I'm gonna make sure that these O-rings are in good shape. It looks like they're using a better O-ring than they did before. They used to have a red one on there that would break almost every time you would do bearings. But this new one seems to be a little bit more rigid. So that's good. I'm gonna take my plate cover, sneak it back over that wire. Now it's pressed on there. All right, so now I got this ready to go. When you do this, make sure you don't have any loose clothing on. I actually had a zipper one time get stuck in between the hub plate and the magnet, and it took out my favorite sweatshirt, so I don't want that to happen again. But I'm gonna bring it down, and it just goes. It's definitely a little scary for your first time, but after you do it enough, you realize it's no biggie. So I'm gonna get rid of this old XR hub now. I'm sorry, this is not a hub, this is a block. And you can see that this thing didn't set down all the way, so I'm gonna show you something that you can do to get that pressed in there nice and smooth. And what I like to do is I'll take my PVC, this is like another thing that I use all the time. Take the PVC, thread it over that, just like so. I'm gonna take a wood block, and I'm gonna use that to press that down perfectly. And now it's time to start putting these little guys back in. All right, so now I'm gonna put these hub plate screws back in. When I do that, I'm gonna wanna use Vibratite because I don't want those coming loose on me. And Vibratite has become my favorite thing to use as a thread locker. There's a good video that will link below that shows which one's the best, and they said Vibratite's the best, so that's what I'm gonna go with. And you don't need a lot, so I'm gonna do a tiny little dab of it, and that's perfect. Okay, so now I'm gonna tighten down these. When I'm doing this, I'm gonna go in a star pattern, and I'm just gonna do them kind of hand tight to start with, and then I'm gonna go back and once again tighten them in a star pattern, but get them real nice and tight. All right, so now I got them in there all kind of tight. Now I'm gonna just go back and do like a quarter turn on each of them. Make sure that they're in there nice and snug. I know that I got the Loctite, and they should be real good from now on.
Do they come on with Loctite already?
They do.
Okay.
Yep. And my general rule of thumb is anytime there's Loctite on something, I'm gonna put it down again just to be safe. I know a lot of people don't put them on these, but might as well go above and beyond if you can. All right, so this is put back together. We got some fresh bearings in there. They feel really smooth. And we're gonna put this board back together. The thing I really like about this screw gun is it's never too tight. You don't want to over tighten these, and it's very hard to do that with this. All right, so when you put everything back together, make sure that this motor cable is up in the rail. You can see it's out right now, so I'm just gonna pop it in there, and that's it. Those. Now I can tighten the other side up a little bit better as well. There's one, there's another. And then these two. I'm going to plug in my foot pad connector, turn it until you feel it click. Next, I'm gonna do these 4 screws that hold the foot pads in place from the bottom. And next, I'm gonna grab those bumpers. There's the back, there's the front. So the front has those grooves. It's just gonna slide into place. You wanna make sure that it's on all the way, so we're not gonna cross thread anything here. And like I said, the short screws are gonna be the ones that are on the top here, and the long screws are gonna be on the ends. Okay. The back one's super simple. It just literally just sets right on there. Same deal, 4 shorties on the top part. And the 2 long ones on the end. And as you can see, I got 4 bolts left for my fender, so I know I didn't miss any screws. All right, so I'll put that on there, and you'll feel it kind of click into place. This is the most important part of the thing for me. When I'm putting a tire back on, I want to make sure that my hub bolts are nice and tight. And I feel like some days you're stronger than other days. You know, you might be a little bit hungover one day and you don't have the strength that you normally would have. So I like to use a torque tool, and that way I know that every single time I'm doing it, it's going to be the exact same torque spec and I have nothing to worry about. So if you guys have any questions regarding a bearing change or where you can get a bearing change done, hit us up in the comments. We'd be glad to answer any questions. We love helping anybody that needs anything. And if you also have any ideas for how-to videos that we can do in the future, let us know below and we'll try to make it happen. Thanks for watching. You guys have a good one.